here to talk about presidents, the press, and the people. Cal Berkeley professor of public policy and former Clinton Labor Secretary Robert Reich. He's the author of Saving Capitalism for the Many, Not the Few. Also with us, Jeffrey Lord, who's a Trump supporter and a contributing editor at the American Spectator, and, well, you know, Ronald Reagan. Jeff, I always like to mention Reagan before you do. How do you square President Trump today attacking the press, saying they're, quote, the enemy, condemning the use of unnamed sources by the press, when he himself and his campaign have been those very sources in the past, and then in almost the same breath saying he, quote, loves the First Amendment, nobody loves it better than me?
Well, I think he does love the First Amendment. He makes great use of it. But, you know, Anderson, I want to congratulate you. You played just this second the absolute correct truth of what he said today about the American media. And I just want to hold up as an illustration. The New York Times today, along with CNN, faced a ban from the White House for a gaggle, as they say. I just want to hold up this story from the New York Times, February 17th, a few days ago. Trump calls the news media the enemy of the American people is the headline, and that is the essence of the first sentence. And then eventually they get around to the tweet, which actually says the fake news, and the president puts fake news in caps. The fake news media, failing New York Times, paren, failing New York Times, CNN, NBC News, and many more, close paren, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. In other words, this story from the New York Times is itself fake news, because he was saying fake news media. What they did is take that out of the headline and put media in there. You just did it correctly. The New York Times did it incorrectly, and that's the kind of thing.
But he's saying the New York Times, he's saying,
in essence, believe is what's wrong with the media.
But he's saying the New York Times, CNN are all fake.
What he's saying is that they are publishing fake stories. This story is clearly fake. He did not say it. You've got the whole import of the story is that he's saying that media is the enemy of the American people. Only when you scroll down do you see the actual tweet, which he said fake news media is the enemy of the American people.
Well, Secretary Rice,
huge difference.
Do you see a difference there? Because it seems like he's labeling pretty much, you know, some of the most mainstream sources of news fake news media.
Clearly, Anderson, we have a president who does not want to be criticized. He doesn't like the media exposing anything or talking back to him or arguing with him or holding him accountable for anything that he's saying. He has repeatedly singled out the New York Times and CNN and a few others for propagating fake news, being specific about what they're doing, except that they are holding him accountable. And he did say in that tweet clearly that they are the enemy of the American people. I've never heard a president say anything like that. Today, he went on and on at the Conservative Political Action Conference, again attacking the media, attacking the New York Times, attacking CNN and several others. And then Sean Spicer had an informal press briefing, but they kept the New York Times and CNN and a couple of other so-called unfriendly news outlets outside the White House and outside the press briefing. First time I've ever heard anything like that.
What do you think the strategy is? It just to distract from the Russia stories, to distract from stories, and to kind of set the stage for any future negative stories, to just discount them by saying, well, the people reporting them are just fake?
Yes, Anderson, I think that that's exactly it in terms of undermining the credibility of the media that dislikes, or at least in Trump's view, dislikes Trump and is crossing Trump or is criticizing Trump. And therefore, the president keeps on saying, don't pay attention to, don't believe these media. They are propagating so-called fake news. And so as the New York Times and CNN and a couple of other outlets presumably get closer and closer to maybe some Russian connection, Trump can turn around and say, well, I've told you all along that's fake news, and we cannot in any way give it any credibility. Look, this is partly ego. I think that it is clear that this is a man who is hugely narcissistic and doesn't like anybody and any news agency to be in any way critical about him. But it goes beyond that. I think there's some strategic basis for what he is doing.
Let's Jeff?
Anderson, all the way back in 1964, and I will not mention the R word, Barry Goldwater was about to be nominated for president in San Francisco, and CBS News ran a story saying that when the convention was over, and my source for this is Barry Goldwater's autobiography, which I have right here, that Barry Goldwater, when the convention was over, was going to go to Hitler's old playground in Berchtesgaden, Germany, to address a neo-Nazi group. There was not a shred of truth to it. It was reported as gospel by Dan Shore of CBS News. 24 years later, Barry Goldwater was still angry about this. My point is, this kind of thing, they didn't even have the term fake news in that 1964. This kind of thing has been done over and over and over again by conservative Republicans. So therefore, to conservative Republicans. So therefore, when you hear President Trump today say this to CPAC, the people at CPAC get it. This is gospel with these folks. They think that the media.
I think with wait a minute, with due respect, that is utterly ridiculous. We have a president here who is telling big lies over and over again about the size of his mandate. I mean, today he went on and on at CPAC about how many people voted for him. You've never seen anything like it. When in fact, the mandate, his so-called mandate, his electoral college mandate, is one of the smallest in history, between 1/4 and 1/5 of what it normally gets. And secondly, he lost the popular vote by almost a record number, almost 3 million people, and yet he lies over and over again. There is no end of his lies.